Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about Super WrestleMania on the Sega Genesis. So there is no story to talk about, we'll just jump right into the gameplay. It's fine. It's what you would expect from these three games, seeing how they are just direct ports from the Super Nintendo versions of them. The same company made both games. They were published by different companies, but different companies that are still working under Acclaim. There actually are a decent number of game modes on here, but there's no special match, so you don't get the stipulation of, let's say, a steel cage match or a hardcore match. It's a little upset. They also don't have a tournament, which I thought was kind of weird. The WWF Championship match is just a gauntlet where you run through the other characters. It's really not all that special, and it feels a little bit like one of the games you would find on the Nintendo Entertainment System, but with slightly prettier graphics. So you have a one-on-one match, a tag team match, a Survivor Series match, and then the WWF Championship match, which, like I mentioned, is just a gauntlet match. In the two-player mode, you have the one-on-one, tag team, and Survivor Series matches, which I guess makes sense. You don't want to have the championship match because it wouldn't be a gauntlet, it would just be a gauntlet instead of a tournament, so that would be kind of crappy. The controls are okay. There are some special moves in this for each character, but for the most part, they all have the same basic moves. And really everything just kind of devolves into button mashing. And when I was using the 3-button controller for the Genesis, it kind of felt a little cumbersome, to the point where I wasn't sure if it was the game or the controller I was using. This was really apparent when I was trying to figure out how to pin my opponent, and the buttons I was pressing just did not want to do it. It was really, really annoying. That was what made me think it was more of a controller issue than the actual game. But just like the Super Nintendo version of this, I don't like the control scheme all that much, even though the controls do respond for the most part. The scheme is really goddamn annoying. It just is you mashing one of the 3 buttons in order to do one of the moves. And it's kind of shit. I don't really like it all that much. Overall, the gameplay is okay, but it's somewhat repetitive. You do have some options for playing here, like different game modes, but other than that, it's just kind of an average game. I don't really have much more to say about the gameplay. It's just okay. It's not going to be anything special, and it's just kind of a repetitive game that doesn't offer a whole lot. There's something that just kind of feels off with how this game looks. I don't think it looks as good as the Super Nintendo version. The character sprites are kind of hit and miss for me. Some of them look okay, while others kind of look terrible. The Ultimate Warrior is one that really stands out for me because his face just looks like a blob of a single color. I wasn't really expecting all of the colors that you would see from videos or pictures of the Ultimate Warrior, but I was expecting something that looked a little bit better than an 8-bit Nintendo game. It just didn't quite look right. Other characters also look a little bit off because they kind of used a very similar character model. And Papa Shango also has a lot of those same issues where his face just kind of looks like a blob of nothingness. Every character sprite is pretty much the same. The developers were just kind of swapping the graphics around from one model to the other in order to make different characters. This creates some odd moments, like in the other games, where 300-pound Hulk Hogan has the same body type as 240-pound Shawn Michaels. it just looks a little bit weird, especially when you look up in the manual what these people are supposed to look like, or you see them on TV and they don't look similar to what they are here, or at least they don't all look the same like they do in this. Overall, I think the graphics are they're a little bit crap, but they're not that bad. There are a number of flaws that you'll see in this, but those are things that you're going to see repeat themselves in these games. These were all done by the same developer, so yeah, we're going to be in for the same control scheme and some of the same tricks to get this game done as quickly as possible, or to get these games done as quickly as possible. I do want to say one thing, though. This does not look as good as what the Super Nintendo game looked. And it kind of was a little disappointing because not every Sega Genesis game is going to look worse than a Super Nintendo game. There are going to be differences, but this one, for some reason, I feel it looks worse than the Super Nintendo one. I can't really put my finger on why, though. I think the game has a pretty good roster, and I do like the idea of putting specific wrestlers on this version and not having them on the Super Nintendo version. It just kind of makes things a little bit different and is kind of a way to make the game stand out, even though, yeah, all the wrestlers are still going to be the exact same. But it is cool that I can play as Papa Shango because I really kind of like that. While I was playing it, I just kept on imagining that he was the Godfather because I like this gimmick and his Godfather gimmick a lot more than Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine, or whatever the hell he was called in between. So it's cool that you can see these characters, and it gives a little bit of a difference between the Genesis and the Super Nintendo version. In the case of Super WrestleMania, I think the SNES version is the better game. I like this version's roster a little bit better, but they just don't look as good as the Super Nintendo wrestlers. The control schemes are the exact same between these two versions, and I don't like either of them at all. I understand it a lot better now when I was playing this game than I did on the Super Nintendo, but that didn't make it any better. The character sprites look a little bit worse in this version. Everything else looks pretty much the same, but the characters just don't look all that great. Sometimes they're okay, but other times it's like, what did you do to this person when you brought him over here? And I also just don't like that they reuse the character sprites. I've said that with the previous games that were on the Super Nintendo, and I'm probably going to say it with the other two games that are on the Sega Genesis. It's just kind of disappointing that they couldn't make the character sprites look different. And yeah, having the few game modes that are on here, well, it's nice that they do have some variety. It would have been better if they had just like a tournament or one or two more game modes to kind of make things stand out a little bit more. I'm not going to harp on this for not having a storyline because none of these wrestling games have storylines yet. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I will talk to you later. Bye.